The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Well, good morning, CHD TV, and happy day after Christmas, December 26th, Friday. I hope everybody had just a wonderful Christmas holiday. We have a real treat for you today. We are going back to the CHD Conference, which was over a month ago, but it seems like 5 years ago. So many things are happening in MAHA and in CHD land that it makes time sort of freeze in a way. But the panel that we are showing, the panel discussion that we're showing is called The Enduring Nightmare of COVID mRNA Technology. So many luminaries on this panel. It was a little overwhelming and daunting being the moderator of such a mighty crew. But the mRNA technology from the COVID jab, shot, whatever you want to call it. I would not call it a vaccine personally, but the nightmare that caused regarding myriad issues with individuals producing spike protein after the jab for over 2 years, long COVID vaccine injury. This panel really checked all the boxes. We had scientists, we had practitioners, we had luminaries that were so eloquent and spoke so just importantly about the problems with this technology. So I hope you enjoy this and have a wonderful rest of your holiday. This is sitting up here with my heroes and these luminaries, not daunting at all in any way, shape, or form. But if you look at these individuals' qualifications, I'm overwhelmed. I'm absolutely overwhelmed to be in the presence. And I brought a cheat sheet. Dr. Peter McCullough, board-certified cardiologist. Doing amazing work at the McCullough Foundation. He completed his medical degree as an Alpha graduate from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School, and completed his internal medicine residency at the University of Washington, go Huskies, cardiology fellowship, including service as a chief fellow at the William Beaumont Hospital. And with over 1,000 publications and 660 citations on PubMed. Check him out, the National Library of Medicine. He's a recipient of the Simon Dack Award for the American College of Cardiology, International Vicenzi Award for Critical Care Nephrology for a scholarship in research, editor-in-chief of Reviews in Cardiovascular Medicine, senior associate editor of the American Journal of Cardiology, and serves on the editorial board of multiple specialty journals. Dr. McCullough serves as chief scientific officer of the Wellness Company and co-chairs the organization's chief medical board. What do you do in your spare time? No, I have a specific question. I want to go through these bios because these are incredibly gifted people that God has given us in the health freedom movement, and that have made incredible sacrifices in their own careers and in their own well-being, up to losing their own countries for the health, because it was the right thing to do. Dr. McCullough, what was it like? When did you first have your epiphany specifically around mRNA technology?
It was, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm greatly honored to be here as a Texas physician, and so many of you people all over the world. It's been great to take pictures and shake hands. But I became aware of messenger RNA technology, which had actually been in development for decades. I had no idea. Through the 2020 development campaign for the COVID-19 vaccines. And I was I was at Baylor at the time, Scott Atlas at Stanford. Scott and I were chosen to write op-eds in the Hill through 2020, kind of to advise the Senate and House, White House. And my last op-ed, you can imagine, I was never invited back for another one. My last op-ed was titled "The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Vaccine Development Program." That it was a gamble to use this genetic technology of which we knew little. And it offered a tremendous window for misadventure and human harm, and that's what we've seen.
Absolutely. There's absolutely nothing like it. And I'd like to go to Jessica Rose. Jessica she's become an incredible friend. And she's a senior fellow specializing in computational biology at the Independent Medical Alliance, the IMA. Woo! She holds a bachelor's degree in applied mathematics, a master's degree in immunology from Memorial University of Newfoundland, and a PhD in computational biology at Bar-Ilan University. She's had 2 postdoctoral associates, one in molecular biology from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the other in biochemistry at Technion Institute of Technology, and she has contributed massively with myriad publications and so many presentations and her analyses of pharmacovigilance databases, including the CDC's VAERS system. She's really taken, the dregs of what the CDC will release, and she's made it sing to society, sing a warning to society. And Jessica, thank you so much, first of all, for your work. And then
You're
also, let's talk about I believe it was your recent paper. I want you to talk about that, please.
Thanks, everybody. First of all, I just want to say a very heartwarming, love to all of you. I've been kind of overwhelmed by the people coming up to me and knowing who I am and stuff. I'm just a normal person, so I want to say thanks and I love you all. I don't have cheery things to talk to you about today. Sorry. But it's important that everybody know the gist of what we found and published recently in the journal Autoimmunity. Me and my 2 colleagues, Kevin McKernan, who's a genomics expert, and David Speaker in Canada, who's an immunologist, did manage to get our recent work published where we investigated whether or not there was DNA, not mRNA, DNA in the Pfizer and Moderna vials that we tested. And in every single vial that we tested, and we did 2 different quantification techniques and really good controls, we found loads of DNA, way over the EMA limits that are established, which, by the way, this is very important, are already too high, because they're based on naked DNA, which has about a 10-minute half-life. We're talking about lipid nanoparticle encapsulated DNA, and the modus operandi of these things is to traffic to cells and get inside and dump whatever payload they're carrying, be it RNA, nucleoside-modified RNA, siRNA, or DNA. It's also very important that you know in this paper, the products that people got as part of commercial products, that's like the billions of doses that went into most people, are different from the ones that were trialed. They're different because the DNA that was used to produce the nucleoside-modified mRNA in case of the clinical trials was made using PCR. And the commercial products, when they wanted to upscale, because they had to come up with a way to make billions and billions of doses at warp speed, they needed to make it cheap and they needed to make it fast. So they switched to something called a plasmid E. coli system, which is something that we use in the lab to make tons of DNA overnight. It's really cheap because E. coli double every 20 minutes. But the problem with this is that if you don't clean up your product, your nucleoside-modified mRNA product at the end, you could end up with contaminants like lipopolysaccharide as a byproduct of the E. coli bacteria, which is highly toxic if you inject it. People will go into anaphylactic shock, and DNA. So that's why and how it got in the vials. And the worst part is that those commercial products were not trialed. They checked out these things on 250 people in one lot and then put it into billions. That's not right. It's not okay. New product, new trials. And there's a whole bunch of other frauds, but I've been talking too long already, so that's the meat of what I wanted to let all of you know, and everybody go tell 10 people. Because they're gonna retract the paper, by the way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica. And Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, such a hero of mine. This is the person who I wish I would have listened to when I was making vaccine choices for my son, along with choosing the theme of his nursery and, you know, what type of Huggies he was going to wear. Really, really important decisions like that. But Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, glasses on here, is a graduate from University of Toledo, earned her degree in osteopathic medicine from Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine, board certified in emergency medicine through 2006, holds board certification in osteopathic manipulative medicine, and also a special certificate in integrative medicine. She served as an emergency medicine physician in Findlay, Ohio. In 1996, she founded the Tenpenny Integrative Medical Center in Strongsville, Ohio. She's a founder and manager of several online businesses and founder of nationally recognized Tenpenny Health Restoration Centers. She's the author of several books with contributions to others, and her articles have appeared in at least 14 languages. I butchered just one. She also hosts a podcast, the Tenpenny Files. Dr. Tenpenny, you've seen a lot. You've seen absolutely a lot of suffering, and you've prevented so much suffering at the same time. How is the mRNA technology different from what you've seen, what you've investigated for regarding so-called quote-unquote vaccinations?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being here. It's so good to see everybody. Thank you. And if you remember how these conferences used to be a couple hundred people, look at us now. This is great. This is unbelievable, plus all the people that are watching online. Yeah, I've been doing this 25 years. You know, when people started calling me the OG, I thought it meant old goat. So and then they said, no, that's not what it meant. That's supposed to be a compliment. So I've been doing this a long time. You know, I was one of the first people that spoke out about the COVID shots and have been, you know, never wavered from the beginning for 25 years. The vaccines are not safe, never been proven to be safe. They don't keep you from getting sick. They're not necessary, and every single one causes harm. And that's been my unwavering message for 25 years. So you know, I just think that the mRNA technology is just a ramp up of damage. You know, all of the vaccines in the schedule, you know, when they passed the 1986 Act in 1986, there was only 3 vaccines, MMR, DPT, and polio. And I've thought about this a lot, that the people in Congress at the time that passed that law, they were like, well, we can protect the pharmaceutical industry. It's just these 3 little vaccines. It's not a big deal. Unwillingly and unknowingly, then it was like Fanny bar the door. They just opened all that stuff up starting in 1991, and you guys know the ramp up of the schedule. And so as we've gone from 3 vaccines to now multiple doses of 16 or 17, depending on how you count them, they all cause harm. But the mRNA vaccines that came along, because of the side effect, because they broke 2 of the 3 tenets when they released it under the Emergency Use Authorization, they lied about it. It was an experimental product that, like you said, they just tested on a small number of people and then released it on the world. And it's just the next level of damage. And it's more serious and more damaging. And the fact that it's still on the market blows my mind. And it's the fact that pediatricians would still, and obstetricians would still advocate for it blows my mind. It's like, are they, you know, back in 2020, when all this COVID stuff first started, I wanted to create a t-shirt that said, that had tombstones on it, and the tombstone said, death of literacy, death of common sense, death of informed consent, and my staff wouldn't let me do it. So it's just the next level of atrocity of how they want to damage us and make us customers for life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Sherri. Dr. Pierre Kory is the former chief of critical care service and medical director of the Trauma and Life Support Center at the University of Wisconsin. He is a U.S. pioneer in critical care ultrasonography. He developed the first national courses, served as the director of the American College of Chest Physicians, and is the senior editor of the leading textbook, Point of Care Ultrasound. He's actually a physician that doesn't call in the ultrasound tech to do the ultrasound. He can do it himself. He pioneered therapeutic hypothermia for post-cardiac arrest patients, served on New York City's Project Hypothermia expert panel with Paul Merrick. He advanced septic shock treatment using high-dose intravenous ascorbic acid, identifying the critical link between therapy timing and survival. During the pandemic, Dr. Kory led ICUs in New York, Greenville, South Carolina, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's co-authored 5 key papers, including the first to describe early COVID respiratory disease as organizing pneumonia, the critical response of disease to corticosteroids. Dr. Pierre Kory saved so many lives during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Dr. Kory, what was really your come to Jesus? You sacrificed so much, by the way. I mean, you know, we could spend the next 30, 35 minutes just talking about the sacrifices that these individuals have made for telling the truth. But Dr. Kory, what was your come to Jesus moment regarding the mRNA technology?
So when I first heard they were rolling out a vaccine, I knew a little bit about coronavirus vaccines, which they'd failed in the past. So I was like, this is weird. I thought the gorillas died when they, gave them coronavirus vaccines from ADE. And so I was very skeptical, but I don't know. I also, at that point, I was still naive and trusting. Like, if they've developed one, it must be effective. And I wasn't paying attention. I was literally immersed in trying to communicate that there was a treatment. I was really immersed in the research of ivermectin. But starting in January of 2021, I started to hear whispers that VAERS was blowing up. And for the first time, I took a look at it, went on the website, I was like, whew, that looks busy. The reports of deaths and all sorts of various vaccine injuries. And I was, and then I was even looking at other ones. So very early on, I saw there was a signal there that was really cautious. Still didn't look at it. My parents asked me, they were kind of almost begging me for permission, because they knew I was deeply studied on COVID. They were begging me for permission to get a vaccine because they live in Manhattan. And they were being ostracized. They couldn't go to the gym, the concert. They like to go to symphonies. Their friends weren't inviting them over. And I reluctantly said, all right, maybe just get the J&J. This is March of 2020. And very soon after that, I started to dig in. And I got to tell you guys, within 2 hours of looking in VAERS, I was shocked. Something that very few people know is that when you look at a VAERS report, there's a little clinical vignette that's attached to the report. It's what we call in medicine a two-liner. 2 lines, and I'm reading over and over and over again the same temporal association. Person visited the pharmacy at 12:30, came home at 3:30 in the afternoon, not feeling well, went to lie down, found in cardiac arrest. Over and over and over again. And I was freaking out. I'm like, why aren't we talking about this? These people are all dying in a close, tight temporal association to getting jabbed. And this is where it gets real. You got really odd, right? So in the FLCCC, we really didn't want to take a position on the vaccines. We didn't want to be pro or anti. We wanted to look at the data. And I started to make noise in the FLCCC. And I was getting headwinds even there. I will tell you, out of the 5 of us, there's a normal distribution on most characteristics. So I was at the leading edge of being like, guys, there's something going on here that we got to call attention to. And I wasn't getting traction. I would say Paul Marik was the closest to me. He was still very cautious. He thought I was calling stuff before there was enough data, and I wouldn't stop. And I just kept shoving data at the rest of them. Actually, one of the colleagues that founded the FLCC ended up leaving and asking his name and face to be taken off of the website. And it was some rocky times. And you guys know, that was during the PSYOP, right? Like, anyone who said anything negative around the vaccines was suddenly shunned, criticized, accused of murdering people, murdering grandmas. And, I will never, ever forget in my entire life that year of 2021, when the entire country was being propagandized, targeted with informational poison, and people were behaving so crazy. I felt like I had my head pretty kept together, but I was seeing craziness everywhere. People blathering thoughts that made no sense. I saw policies coming out from the agencies that were on their face illogical. I saw the concept of natural immunity disappear overnight because the FDA put like a web page up saying don't check antibodies for immunity because there's no evidence to suggest that's protective. And then I saw biomedical ethics, something that I had been deeply studied. I'd been on ethics committees in every hospital I'd ever worked in. Biomedical ethics just disappeared. And I felt unmoored. I felt like I was living in a society that I thought was guided by principles, institutions, and they were all falling down in front of me. And yeah, I guess the question was what was my come to Jesus moment? I went really far, but yeah, it was just reading clinical vignettes and VAERS. That's what it was. It was like smack in the face. People were dying. I was reading it right there on the page, and no one's paying attention. And the media just kept singing the same song: safe and effective, safe and effective.
Absolutely. So we can blame it on Jessica, right, Jessica? Absolutely.
Yeah,
Still singing.
it's my fault.
Dr. Bret Weinstein, excuse me. He has a PhD in biology from the University of Michigan, where he received the Don Tinkle Award for distinguished work in evolutionary ecology. He was a professor at Evergreen State College for 14 years. His scholarly research focused on evolutionary trade-offs. He has worked on the evolution of senescence and cancer. Not relevant today at all. Species diversity gradients and the adaptive significance of human morality and religion. He has written for the Wall Street Journal and testified to the U.S. Congress regarding questions of freedom of expression on college campuses. He recently co-wrote the New York Times bestseller, A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, with his wife, Heather Heying, and he is also currently host of the Dark Horse podcast. Let's talk about the morality. I mean, you've spent some time looking at the evolution of morality. What was the moral compass regarding the uptake of the mRNA technology?
Well, that's actually a simple question. There was no morality in the way they deployed this technology. Let's come back to that. Sure. I wanted to actually tell you what my come to Jesus moment was here, because I think it's telling.
Absolutely.
So in the book, A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, Heather and I, this book, we've literally finished it. We finished the final draft, emerged from the Amazon where we had gone to insulate ourselves from the world, and we returned to news of the first case of COVID in the New World. It happened to be in Ecuador. And so began to quickly try to figure out what was going on. But that just tells you, the book was written before COVID was a thing. And in that book, Heather and I wrote that vaccines were one of the 3 great triumphs of modern medicine, the other 2 being surgery and antibiotics. So that tells you where I was in early 2020. Fast forward to the deployment of the mRNA vaccines. My come to Jesus moment was this. They told us about these vaccines and how marvelous they were. They said they were tremendously effective, and I believed them. But they also said they were safe. Now, I'm a theoretical biologist. careful logic is what I do. At the moment they told me they were safe, I knew they were lying. There is no conceivable way they could be safe. There is nothing they could have seen in the laboratory that would tell you they were safe, because safe doesn't mean without harm, it means without risk, right? If you drive home drunk and you don't hit anything, it wasn't safe, right? It's the risk that makes it unsafe. So when they deployed a brand new technology that they had not looked at the long-term consequences of, there's no conceivable way they could declare it safe. They could have said something like, we have seen no harm, and that I couldn't have said for sure was a lie. But when they told me it was safe, I knew they were lying. And once you know they're lying, and you start looking into those lies, wow, is that rabbit hole deep. And of course, it leads to the other vaccines too, because my belief about vaccines being one of the 3 great triumphs of modern medicine is predicated on what it says in the textbook about vaccines, which I still think is very elegant, and I hope that maybe a vaccine could be made for which this was true. But what they don't show you in the textbook is how these things are manufactured and what assumptions are built into those technologies. And the fact is, we have 3 basic platforms, right? We have live attenuated, which has the danger of evolving out from under you, spreading from person to person. We have killed viruses, which are too weak to stimulate a proper immune response and require an adjuvant. Those adjuvants are obviously unsafe. And now we have variations on this gene technology, primarily the mRNA. That can't be safe because by turning your cells into a vaccine factory, they of course trigger your immune system to see your cells as virally infected, causing your immune system to attack your own cells. That happens in your heart, guess what? That's a very serious problem. So the idea that in the practical world, these things don't amount to what we think they do when we just read the beautiful story in the textbook, that's an important lesson for all of us. And I sort of feel like my significance in this movement has been that I was naive, and watching me wake up has been useful for people, right? They can find their way out of whatever naivete they have because, you know, I do this in public, and yes, it's embarrassing, but it's telling.
Thank you. I want to turn to Dr. McCullough. I don't believe that this particular technology, especially with a campaign to put 13 billion shots into arms worldwide, that we've seen or will in the foreseeable future see the end to the damage. But what is sort of the end conclusion with seeing circulating spike protein for such a long period of time and seeing also residual lipid nanoparticle, residual RNA, residual DNA contaminants? What's the long-term consequence for that?
You know, I testified in the U.S. House of Representatives now about 18 months ago, and I was asked that question, what type of window do we have of concern? And, you know, the honest answer is, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. But in the FDA regulations for genetic technology, a window is placed out there of 5 to 15 years. And I think a lot of it just has to do with cell turnover in the body. There are some terminally differentiated organs like the heart that do have cell turnover, but it's over a very long period of time. Typically for the heart, it's about 7 or 8 years. But I can tell you that the investment in messenger RNA technology worldwide is unparalleled compared to any other medicinal or biopharmaceutical platform. Tens of billions of dollars have been invested over decades in this. Every Western country, their government research operations have bought into messenger RNA big time. Not small, big time. There's over 3,000 patents on messenger RNA technology. The companies have seduced governments to support their work on this. You heard about 22 messenger RNA vaccine platforms being terminated out of BARDA. BARDA is one of our pandemic response units at the National Institutes of Health. That's 22 out of hundreds. And these aren't co-development programs. It's not like the U.S. government scientists are doing anything. They are government handouts to the biopharmaceutical companies. All the inventors of messenger RNA work for these big companies. They're deep into 7+ figures of salaries and royalties. The money exchanged in this world for messenger RNA technology is in the trillions. It's in the trillions. And there are aspirations to replace all the conventional childhood vaccines with messenger RNA technology. There are aspirations to have messenger RNA technology produce immune factors to seek out and fight cancer, for instance, to replace deficient proteins in protein-deficient syndromes, for instance. And the list goes on and on. The enthusiasm for this is unparalleled. And I think when we have unbridled enthusiasm, this irrational exuberance for anything in life, what is sacrificed is safety. It's safety. And we presented our autopsy work on death after COVID-19 vaccination at the American Society of Microbiology. Thousands of microbiologists, vaccinologists, immunologists were there. And as people came by and we talked to them, I was stunned with how they had been scientifically seduced with messenger RNA technology. So there is going to be a cataclysmic recognition that this is an unsafe platform. There's no way to break down, that I'm aware of, pseudo-uridinated messenger RNA. We're working in research labs. We have circulating messenger RNA of Pfizer or Moderna in my patients in their bloodstream 3 years after the shots, intact. We have not only spike protein in their bloodstream, the full-length spike protein held open in the pre-fusion conformation, circulating in a trimer in the bloodstream, and it's widely distributed in tissues, again, over 3 years after the shots. And it's not just that. We see the fragments of DNA. We see fragments of DNA coding for spike protein. This is important to understand, because when this plasmid comes out of E. coli, it's not clean. It breaks up. So, of course, there is fragments for, you've heard about SV40, the promoter, the enhancer inhibitor. There are antibiotic resistance genes. But, of course, there are gene sequences for part of the spike protein. They come off, too. So we see fragments of spike protein. So people who have taken these vaccines are loaded with an array of spike proteins. The messenger RNA is probably misread and produces other unwanted proteins called frameshift proteins. So in clinical medicine, what I am seeing as a doctor, and I'm in practice every day, is I am seeing an entirely new field of medicine emerge. And it's been termed spikeopathies or spike protein-related illnesses. And the illnesses themselves may be a product of actually having foreign genetic material in the body independent of the spike protein. We can't tell. But I'll finish by saying the Biden administration spent $1 billion on this through the HHS long COVID program. Not in a single research program did they consider the vaccine contributing to illness in the population. Not in a single program did they measure the spike protein, which also was in the body after SARS-CoV-2 infection. They didn't even consider that. And you can imagine, after $1 billion, no protocols, no therapies, no in vitro diagnostics, nothing. $1 billion wasted. Now we have the new administration in. A year into this, zero. Zero on long COVID, zero on vaccine injury research. And the medical community doesn't want to see this. They want to wait out this administration and get back to usual. The medical community does not want to talk about this pandemic at all.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely incredible. And we have a distinguished molecular biologist on the panel, Dr. Jessica Rose, and I never miss an opportunity to ask a molecular biology question. We are siblings from different mothers, right? So let's talk about the self-amplifying modified messenger RNA technology. What is it, and what are the implications of it now that there is an approved product? What is it in Japan? Is that correct?
Don't forget to remind me to mention what type of DNA fragments we found. This SV40 thing is important for me to mention. So, on the subject matter of holding on very hard to this technology, the platform, not just the modified mRNA or the nucleoside modified mRNA, but the lipid nanoparticle technology, the whole package. I think that Peter's absolutely right. Like, everything's going to be this gene therapy-based therapeutic stuff in terms of vaccines soon. There's so much evidence for this. One of the, I would say, I suppose it's like a sister product, is this self-amplifying mRNA technology, which has actually been deployed in Japan. I think it was last October 1st. I can't remember, last year. God, it's been a year. How long? This is very different and much more scary than the nucleoside-modified lipid nanoparticle technology because, first of all, the coding material, the construct, comes from Venezuelan equine encephalitis virus. Encephalitis is bad. It's like inflammation of the brain. Comes from a horse, infects other mammals, which is a very important point, including humans. So they took the construct of this virus, they took out the guts that allow it to be like replication competent so that it's not, and then they stuffed in spike genes. And the reason they did this is because they wanted this RDRP gene, which is a part and parcel with this particular virus, RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, RDRP. It basically allows the virus to have its own photocopying machine so that it can amplify its own coding material. And so they wanted to exploit that ability such that when they inject this coding material wrapped in a lipid nanoparticle into you, your cells become production factories for the photocopier, which photocopies the coding material within the construct, and then whatever, the protein they want as a byproduct. And in that case, it was the spike protein. They have a trial going on last year for flu. So they, instead of spike genes, they inserted H and N genes, hemagglutinin or neuraminidase, I can never get that right, neuraminidase. Who cares, right? They're flu genes. And so this is actively going on, and I don't want anyone to get confused, well, if you want to believe me, that this isn't going to just keep going and going and going. And on this subject matter, oh, by the way, it's very, very bad because we don't know when this turns off. There are no studies, nothing to indicate when this is going to stop within a cell. So I would imagine that it's at the metabolic expense of the cell, and or the cell is going to be flagged for self-termination by T cells. And it's this virus, this backbone, does transmit between mammal species, and that's the part that worries me the most, because if somebody's already infected with an alpha virus, which these things are, and it's probably not likely, but it could happen. It's biology, and we're tinkering with biology. There could be something called template switching, and we could actually have the emergence of a really pathogenic, a new kind of virus if that happens. So bottom line is, watch out for your pets too, because they're putting this on the pet market now, this self-amplifying crap, and I can guarantee you that the vets have no idea what they're injecting or spraying. And that's gonna affect other mammals, and we're mammals. So one more thing, I'm sorry, I'm taking up too much time, but the next thing that they're doing, it was published in Science the other day, they're doing this. They have the proof of concept done in mice. Another template, nucleoside modified mRNA, except beside it, there's a little cassette for a nanocage. So this nanocage is going to be constructed by the ribosomes of your cells as proteins. It's going to assemble into like a spherical shape, and it's going to have little holes in it where whatever protein that's, upstream that's coded for is going to stud this little nanocarrier. We're talking about a pseudovirus, and you can stud that thing with whatever you want, hypothetically, and they did. They trialed HIV proteins, and that worries me, because I'm like, because Barrick's on the paper, and I'm like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And are they going to tell us when they come out with the new, magic vaccine bullet, what's in it? What's it for? Because they're not going to have to trial it. It's safe and effective, right? They got through, they got through all that, and now it's just green lighted, rubber stamped, and so yeah. Again, tell 10 people not to partake in any of this stuff because there's no transparency at all, as we all know.
Yeah, Dr. Tenpenny, I want to switch gears a little bit with you, but let's talk about the level of persecution regarding stepping out of the mainline, stepping out of the mainstream around mRNA technology, around these new technologies, and around the COVID shot in general.
Before I answer that, I want to make a comment about what Jessica said about the animals, because they already have an sa-mRNA rabies vaccine. And when I talked to veterinarians, I interviewed a veterinarian who was telling me about this. I said, so if this is a self-amplifying replicating machine for the rabies vaccine in your dog, does anybody know if that transmits to humans? And he said, well, they don't even know. They're not even looking. They don't even really care. So does the rabies virus then end up in humans because your dog got this rabies vaccine? So this is what she was talking about being very careful about what's happening in the future. It's as if it wasn't bad enough now. It's like an incredible sci-fi, you couldn't make this up. I mean, if we gave this to Stephen King, he couldn't do as good of a nightmarish thing as what's happening in reality. I mean, seriously. And it's so careless. So stepping out, is, I guess sometimes things pick you, and sometimes things pick you, and sometimes you pick things. Well, when this thing picks you, you just do it, and do it fearlessly. When you know that you're right, and you're on the right side of science, and you're on the right side of history, why would you stop? And being labeled like one of the disinformation dozen, having my license sanctioned, for lack of cooperating with the state medical board, which was just a joke, because when my attorney went back 40 years, no one's medical license in the state of Ohio had ever been sanctioned for lack of cooperating with an investigation. And that's because the guy at the state medical board said, it wasn't because of your position on vaccines. It wasn't because you said people get magnetized from vaccines, which is just like bubble gum in my shoe, man, because I never said that. What I said was one of the Congress people had asked me, have you seen any unusual symptoms and side effects? This was like in June of 2020. And I said, well, I'm sure people have seen all over the internet these pictures of people putting coins on their head or their cell phones on their arm. And I said, I think that's kind of unusual. And people should probably investigate that well. Now I say people got magnetized. So I'm putting that to bed right now. So you know that the real other side of the story of what that is, but they keep going round and round and round. Like I said, it's like bubble gum on your shoe or something, or toilet paper dragging around on your shoe. So, I'm just encouraging all of you guys that once you know what you know, you can't unknow it. And once you get on the right side of history and you know and you read the science, you study the things, you come to conferences like this with all these people, go forth and be bold. I always, whenever all these things come after me in the media and all this stuff, tinfoil hat, blah, 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 whatever names they want to call me, I always remember when I was a kid growing up in a small town in northern Ohio, then there were a lot of mean girls in there. That was 60 years ago, just like there's mean girls now, right? And I remember my mom always, I'd come home from school and I'd be all upset about something that happened. And she said, just always remember, Sticks and stones can break your bones, but names can never hurt you. So all of you guys, just flick it off like Teflon and just keep going, because you're in the right, and it doesn't really matter what they call you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to ask the same question to Dr. Pierre Kory, because Dr. Kory, not only did you take a trip down the rabbit hole regarding mRNA technology, but I think he found the bottomless pit of rabbit holes looking at, of many of you have since looked at the childhood vaccination schedule. What has it been like for you, Dr. Kory?
What was the question? What is?
What has it been like for you? Regarding the persecution, regarding seeing things you can't unsee.
It hurt. I'm a good guy, man. No, I mean, when things started, it just was shocking. I mean, I was literally, it started, I came to prominence because I gave that testimony in Senate, just trying to provide people a gentle suggestion of a medicine that might help them, and I didn't think I'd committed a crime or done anything wrong. And the backlash was so quick and high level, I'd land, the Associated Press interviewed me within like 36 hours. And that was like the first hit job. And to be honest, it was very confusing and disorienting. I couldn't figure out why the reaction was so negative. And then it just kept increasing. And then, oh boy, when I started giving my opinions on vaccines, the backlash exploded. But I'll tell you, what changed for me, and I've said this story many times, is after my testimony, which was in December of 2020, I really was confused. I didn't know what was going on. Nothing was making sense. I was watching newspapers or reading newspapers that I had long trusted and believed in propagate lies repeatedly. Quotes from very esteemed doctors with letters behind them just saying utter nonsense. And I still didn't know what was going on. My life changed really in March of 2020 when I got an email from one of the most published vitamin D specialists or experts in the world. And it was a 2-line email, and he wrote to me, he said, "Dear Dr. Kory, what they're doing to ivermectin, they've been doing to vitamin D for decades." And he included a link to an article called The Disinformation Playbook. And it's a very short article. It's written by the Union for Concerned Scientists. And it literally laid out the 5 main tactics that industries deploy when science emerges that's inconvenient to their interests. And my eyes were like popping out of my head because I'm reading this and it's describing everything that had confused me for those last 4 months. And I always say it was like getting the teacher's edition to the world. And so like to answer your question, I don't know that it hurt, I just couldn't understand it. And then after I read that article, it just like something clicked. And I saw the world very differently. And, Bret always said, like in the beginning when I first met Bret, I think it was on his podcast, and he talked about this thing that is there, but you can't feel it, and you don't, and like that article actually gave me a sense of what I was up against and what was coming after me and all of us. And I don't know, man, I didn't run away, and I said, bring it, and I just kept hitting back, and I'm still hitting back, and they still try to silence us, ridicule us. I realized also that when they take you down and when they try to, I don't know if lampoon is the right word, or criticize, it is censorship, right? They're trying to rob you of any credibility so that anything you say, people don't listen to you because you're a tin hat, crazy conspiracy theorist who doesn't know science. And I always bring up Bobby because I think he's been the most censored American over the last 20 years, and I love that phrase where, when he was anti-mercury in the water, they didn't call him anti-fish, and then as soon as he was anti-mercury in the vaccines, they called him anti-vax. It's like, but it's relentless what they do against him. And you watch him, stands tall, keeps going. He's got a North Star. And so, like, I try to emulate him.
Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely. Dr. Weinstein, what has it been like for you? I think you run in biological and philosophical circles. I hang out with a bunch of nerdy engineers, And you know, we don't really talk about our emotions and feelings. We just hang out with our calculators and stuff like that. But what from a standpoint of the colleagues around you and the colleagues that you've been doing this for a long time, what has the blowback been like for you?
Well, the blowback is incredible. It's also very costly, right? If you have a family, you're trying to keep a roof over their heads. Putting Pierre and Robert Malone and Steve Kirsch on our podcast got us demonetized for more than 4 years. It also caused YouTube to cap the growth of our channel. So we're doing fine, but where would we be if they hadn't done that is, it's something to think about. So their power to harm you is great. Fortunately, emotionally, this wasn't my first rodeo. And so I sort of feel like I had trained for that kind of slander. And there's a thing I call the painful upgrade. Every time it happens, every time you get slandered for saying the truth, people flee. You lose friends and colleagues. Those are the ones you don't want. And the problem is, under normal circumstances, you don't know that those people aren't up to the challenge of being your friend, right? Because they have to be tested in order to find out. So you lose those people. And then, that hurts. But then you discover there are all of these new people in your lives who show up, people who are up to the challenge, people who have found their way to the same dark place by speaking some truth you might not have known. So your friend group gets better, stronger, more intelligent. Those things are important, but you have to know that that's one of the consequences, or you may cower, which is a mistake. Now, if I can pick up one thing here that I think is really important. Jessica has talked about some of the technologies that are down the road being experimented with. There's no shortage of places this can go, including you can see it coming a mile away. Remember what they said about us folks who didn't want to take the shot, right? We weren't entitled to make that choice, and they used every tool at their disposal to force us into it. Well, what's going to happen is contagious vaccines are going to rob us of the ability to say no. So we have to stop this now. And we have the tool to do it. And when you listen to Jessica, she talks about the fraud. We all know there was fraud, right? It's obvious. What most of us do not know is that the fact that there is fraud and the fact that it is provable means that the immunity to liability held by the companies that made these will evaporate if we can prove that in court. So, if you want this nightmare to end, that's the way to do it. We know that there was DNA in there, and we know that they didn't safety test sufficiently with the DNA version. They pretended it was the version that they had made with process 1. That is a provable fraud. It's obvious. The danger is massive. The harms were massive. And if we can prove that fraud, this mRNA thing will come apart. Pfizer will cease to be.
Can I add one thing? It's a combination of what Peter said as well. Hypothetically, it's because of this N1, the N1 methylpseudouridine that all of this happened, we think, because it's very sticky. So once this guy binds to its cognate base, whatever it is, it's very hard to take them apart. So during the production process, the mRNAs and the DNAs actually hybridized. So they came together, and those DNases that they used at the end of the production line that are meant to break this thing down didn't. So it's the reason I'm saying this is because this is all stuff that they knew. The EMA knew. We have documents that actually prove back in March 2021 that they knew that there was a DNA issue, and they were trying to ameliorate this. So I think the point where everything flipped was when we were reporting that we found this SV40 thing, and Health Canada, I'm Canadian, they admitted it. They said, okay, we blasted it, they're right. Pfizer should have told us this 2 years ago. There's SV40 in here. What's it doing in there? What are the implications? And they said, there's no implications. It's not functional, the SV40 promoter, but it's a mammalian promoter There's no data to support the fact that it's not functional. And if it is functional as a nuclear localization sequence, then it can traffic all the other DNA junk to the nucleus of your cell, and it can cause all sorts of things related to genomic instability, which is also written in Moderna's patent. So exactly what Bret said, there's like so many points of provable fraud, and it's all coming from their own data and documents.
Absolutely. Well,
And there's no statute of limitations on fraud.
that's right.
So, you know, they can sue them forever.
Good to know. Now, I want to thank our distinguished panelists. This is absolutely amazing. I have to conclude it because my brain is full. But I'm so glad that we have these luminaries, these thinkers, these thought leaders, and they're on our side. So thank you all very much.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.